Hey guys, I think anyone who knows me probably saw this video coming. I've argued this point on multiple streams on Quick TV, and I'm gonna make the case here on my channel for you. This may be a contentious video, as many people already have their minds made up about Gary Gygax, but I'm gonna do my best to go over the forum post. I got the inspiration for this video from debate panels that I've been on recently. I've been participating in debates on Quick TV, and I've been frequently running into arguments from people who misquote or misunderstand Gary Gygax's words from an old forum post.
And I think like early on in D&D, it was like intentional to keep women out. Like I have a quote here by Gary Gygax. As a biological determinist, I'm positive that most females do not play RPGs because of a difference in brain function. He literally thought biologically that women would not enjoy D&D.
So, first, let's look at what was actually said on this forum post in Gygax's words. He's quoting another post here from someone named Cab, and Cab writes, Gary, I've just asked Frank a question about women in role-playing games back in the early days. It always looks like early on it was a very male-dominated hobby. Did you chaps regularly have many women in your games? While at TSR, did you have any plans or published products that were designed specifically to tempt more women into the game? Potentially a really big market, I'd have thought. For the life of me, I can't see how you'd go about writing such a thing. And Gary Gygax says, there were never many female gamers in our group. My daughter Elise was one of two original playtesters for the first draft of what became the D&D game, and both of her younger sisters played and lost interest in a few months as she did. In our campaign, in our campaign group that cycled through in a couple years, 74 to 75, something in the neighborhood of 100 or so different players, there were perhaps 3 females. As a biological determinist, I am positive that most females do not play RPGs because of a difference in brain function. They can play as well as males, but they do not achieve the same sense of satisfaction from playing. In short, there is no th- in short, there is no special game that will attract females other than LARPing, which is more socialization and theatrics than gaming, and it is a waste of time or effort to attempt such a thing. This calls to mind when Lionel made pastel-colored trains and train cars to appeal to females. The effort bombed, the sets were recalled and redone as standard models, and those pastel ones that survived are rare collector's items. So much for this topic. Cheers, Gary. So it's pretty obvious why this forum post landed Gygax in hot water, but I want to dive into certain points that he made, but there is a bit of context that may elude some detractors. Gygax mentioned that out of 100 or so players in the 70s, there were about 3 females. This seems counter to what we experience today. I don't know if there are exact figures, but RPGs today seem to be about in the ballpark of 10 to 20% female, and in some circles they make up the majority. So Gygax's 3% figure seems extremely low. However, there are 2 additional factors that play into Gygax's 3% figure that I think people forget. Factor number 1, early D&D as created by Gygax had more in common with war games than they do with today's conventional games that revolve more around cooperative storytelling. It may be more apt to compare these players in Gygax's groups with the demographics of players um, that gather at game shops to play games like BattleTech or Warhammer. Of course, there are women who are interested in both. However, there are many fewer women. War games are more male dominated than D&D as it's commonly played today, and that's just how it is. And factor number 2, it was way less socially acceptable to be a nerd in the 70s than it is now. In the year 2024, nearly everyone you meet has at least one nerdy hobby. But this wasn't always the case, especially among women. Young women are more social on average than young men and face more social pressure from their peers. When one can face social ostr- when one could be excluded socially from playing nerdy games, many young women weren't going to do that because it would mean giving up their friend group, or the groups of other young women when there's no guarantee that the guys who play the nerdy games would even accept them into their social groups, which would leave them friendless. Some women were not swayed by the pressure, but it was there. When I was young, in the 90s and early 2000s, I remember receiving pushback from my peers, and I felt barred from social groups for hanging out with groups of guys that played games. Of course, there were a few other girls who did this, and I made really fast friends with them, but I can only imagine that it was harder than the 70s than it was in the early 2000s. It's also important to note that Gygax qualified in his post that the ladies in his group played just as well as the guys. He never said that women were less capable or less good at the game, as some of his critics claim, but he claimed that they were less interested. This is in all likelihood correct. Gygax claims that the difference is because of a difference in brain function between men and women. And, well, we know that's true. Men and women's brains do function differently, down to differences in molecular pathways. And this is a good thing, by the way. Men and women complement each other, and our differences are what keep society functioning. While there are outliers, on average, there are differences in the brain function of men and women, and this does manifest in the types of games we enjoy. For example, women prefer video games like The Sims, Stardew Valley, and Animal Crossing, and men prefer Counter-Strike, Warhammer, and Call of Duty. There will always be women who enjoy first-person shooters and battle simulators, and there will be men who enjoy farming and life sims. But there is a clear difference on average. Some argue that this difference is cultural and not biological, but it really comes down to an age-old nature versus nurture debate. Personally, I believe that there is at least some biological component to this, as it makes sense that men, who have throughout human history made up the large majority of the demographic that fight in wars, would enjoy war games more than women. Uh, Gygax also claims that it would be a waste of time to make the game appeal to women, and he's right about that. Changing a game to broaden the audience doesn't always end well, and it risks alienating the core base in the process. Gary's approach was the correct one in my opinion. Let women enjoy D&D based on what it is and not based on a shallow attempt to appeal to us. Clearly, there are women who love RPGs. And even in D&D alone, over the years we have seen many female writers, including Margaret Weiss, Gwendolyn Kestrel, Jackie Casada, Laura Hickman, Jean Wells, Penny Williams, and many more. The list expands even more when you include women who work on other RPGs. In fact, one of the greatest OSR games out there right now, Shadowdark, was made by Kelsey Dione. These women didn't need to be lured in with attempts to appeal to us, and they love gaming for what it is. Also, there's nothing wrong with men making games targeted at men. Gygax, Arneson, these guys weren't trying to exclude women. They were just writing what they knew and what they enjoyed. The observation that women are less likely to enjoy RPGs is not in itself sexist. What would have been sexist is doing just what Gygax described, changing the game to appeal to women. Women don't need D&D to be story time or feature cooking or the color pink in order to get our attention. I consider myself an advocate for getting more women into gaming. I do this by asking my girlfriends to game with me. Whenever a guy friend gets a new girlfriend, I normally invite her to our games. I'm always looking to broaden my games to more women because I don't want to be the only woman in my group. It feels weird. And sometimes it happens anyway. So I try my best to make sure that that's not the case when I can. Anyway, guys, that's about all I have to say about this. I'd appreciate it if you could like, comment if you think I'm wrong. Um, Subscribe to the channel. Oh, I hate saying that. I really do. Oh, well, I'm going to anyway. Like, comment, subscribe, do whatever it is you want to do. But yeah, thanks for watching.